Here's a little bit of context. Back in 2015-ish, you have all this hysteria with diversity in entertainment. And back then it wasn't about race, it was about gender. We need more women to write comic books, so more women will read comic books. To know how that works out, considering that women read manga. But a lot of higher ups from Marvel and DC hired a substantial amount of ladies, which not to their fault, but they weren't very up to the job. I mean, Zoe Quinn, for instance, right? Like she never even tweeted about liking comic books before getting hired and given her own flagship comic. So imagine if you, with no experience whatsoever, was plucked up like bloop, from the street and placed in charge of a comic book at Marvel. Like, it's going to be very difficult for you to succeed, right? But on top of that, we find out that the amount of money that they were paid was less than that of a manager at Walmart. So this explains why so many of these ladies, and it wasn't just ladies, it was like a lot of diversity hires at the time. And by diversity hire, I mean like people who were hired just to fit in the diversity quota. A lot of them had distaste towards the fans and to the readers and gave a lot of snark on Twitter. I mean, if you don't like comic books and you're being paid a shit wage on top of that, yeah, you're not going to be very passionate about what you're doing. Because this is what I was always wondering. It's like, look, if you manage to land the job at Marvel or you manage to land the job at DC, like that's a very prestigious place. You're making a lot of money. Why don't you actually put your effort in it? Why don't you start learning about comics? Why don't you like do all these things? And the answer is like there was no motivation when you're paid $30,000 a year. Now, what Heather Anthos did and why she is particularly infamous in the community is that back in the day when the quality of writing for Marvel started downgrading, and I mean really bad, you had a couple of YouTubers which were criticizing the comic book industry. And they were like literally just taking the comic, going through it, and explaining to people, look what garbage is written here, right? Like just reading the comic out loud. Like they weren't editorializing much. Just reading the comic was enough. And they managed to get like significant audiences. And Marvel and DC didn't like that, right? So what they did was they created this artificial campaign where Heather Anthos and some of her colleagues went out to a milkshake and they took a picture. Now, allegedly, someone somewhere sent her mean tweets. But like no one knows what those mean tweets are because she never showed them. But she just said that she's being harassed because she's a woman writing comics. And all of a sudden you have like all these comic book experts, all these professionals, you know, like joining the Mind Milkshake hashtag and showing that they're drinking milkshake in order to stand in solidarity with Heather Anthos. And of course, like, the YouTubers were to blame. Right? Like, the YouTubers who are incapable of asking people to like, comment, and subscribe, or donating a super chat, right? They somehow managed to mind control the masses in order to give nasty DMs to these ladies that were just out there drinking milkshakes. And that's how this whole thing started, and it made them unfireable as well because now you as the company had to back them up and stuff. But they were used more like marketing tactics, right? Like rather than people that were supposed to write comic books. Like the whole shtick was, if you don't like our comic books, it's because you're sexist, right? And it was a gateway to have like all of these activists infiltrating the comic book industry. But now we find out, you know, that they were paid $30,000 a year. That's just insane. That is very low. And as you can see, you know, like people in the comments are like, she didn't say no, which is a good point, right? Like at the time, all these companies were pressured in order to hire more women. Like activists were pressuring them really hard. Like comic books are misogynistic. Oh, you know, in a trailer, a husband comes home drunk and beats his wife. Do you know why? Because of Marvel Comics. And like that was the argument. And the way to make it so that you stop being misogynistic was to hire activists. Now, if the activists would have said no, and we're like, dude, I'm not working for $30,000 a year, then none of this would happen, right? Like, you would have actual living wages. They would have paid money. But this also explains why the comic book industry fired a lot of professionals and hired people like Heather. It's like, well, if you can hire like a random woman and you pay her $30,000 a year, I mean, they must have thought that it's good business, right? And on top of that, they must have thought that it's going to sell because they believe that the new generation is all about diversity, right? Like, they're not going to care about the quality of the story anymore. I mean, it's Marvel, right? It sells by itself. It's got the brand. So, as long as you hire, like, the correct people and they're saying the correct things on Twitter and all of that, you're going to be able to sell comics. Like, the quality doesn't matter. And you manage to make a lot of budget cuts by paying these people very little money, right? So I can see how the higher-ups were thinking about things. Unfortunately for them, manga exists. Unfortunately for them, women still read manga. It's kind of interesting. Like, when I read a manga, I have no fucking idea who wrote it. Like, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I know it's probably a Japanese guy. But even then, I may not know, because apparently there's not just manga. You got, like, the South Koreans are making stuff, and very few that are Chinese exist, right? Like, they have the same style, so literally, I can't fucking tell, and neither do I wanna or care. Like, as long as it's a good story, I want to read it. I do not care who wrote it. I do not care what's in their pants. I do not care which people they want to fuck. Like, none of that is interesting. Like, the only thing that interests me, like, have you written a good story or not? And as you can see, like, people here in the comment section are, like, really, really ripping at them. It's interesting, like, no, they're not really attacking Heather Antos, but they're attacking the corporation. What was her work? Considering what Marvel is releasing, she got paid too much. Okay, you know what? I'm taking that back. It is true, though. Like, none of her comic books ended up being a commercial success. I mean, most of the comic books that took place from 2014 to today, they usually sell, like, what, like 9 issues, and then they have, like, a complete reboot, and then rise and repeat. Disney overpaid by 20,000. They overpaid. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. It's just that when you look at the end product, it's not there, and this is why a lot of people say that these individuals fail upwards, and it's very bizarre, right? Because, like, you would see one of these people that got hired, and they would write a comic book, which ended up getting canceled because they wouldn't sell any issues. And then immediately after, they would be promoted on another comic with a more important title. Like, none of this made sense. But anyway, right, let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.